This newly unsealed federal indictment describes a sophisticated drug and gun crew. Now they face serious federal charges alleging conspiracy.
Police are looking for a man with a gun after shots were fired near Jefferson and Kennedy Streets.
The shooting happened last night on Missouri Avenue Northwest near Kennedy Street.
Neighbors who live in that community and all across the district are frustrated with the level of gun violence plaguing the city.
Khali Brown, known on D.C. streets and stages as Migo Lee, came up in the Northwest Washington neighborhoods around Kennedy Street. By his late teens, Brown had one foot in the world of hip-hop and one foot in the game, running with a crew controlling the Kennedy Street corridor. That crew, the Kennedy Street Crew, often called KDY, was notorious even by D.C. standards. Authorities would later call it one of the largest, oldest, and most violent street crews in our city. As a teenager in the late 2000s and 10s, Brown was drawn into that life, running with a tight-knit gang of neighborhood friends. The crew's base was an 11-block stretch of Kennedy Street Northwest and nearby blocks in Brightwood Park, an area that in those years was rocked by a relentless cycle of open-air drug dealing and gunfire. Between 2019 and 2023, at least 7 people were killed and 6 wounded in crew-related homicides on KDY's turf, plus countless other shootings and assaults. Young Migo Lee came of age in this environment of violence, where street reputations were written in blood. Yet even as Brown embraced the streets, he nurtured ambitions beyond the block.
I used to work in a studio where I used to record people, mix and master their stuff. I'd probably be doing that. I ain't gonna lie. That's a solid little job. And I love music so much that even still now, I record my friends just to, just to do it type. Like, I love everything about music.
Under the moniker Migo Lee, he started recording tracks that gained an audience in the DMV. By 2022, his music was picking up momentum. He boasted nearly 50,000 monthly listeners on Spotify at one point, with several of his songs racking up 6-figure streams. One tribute track, Long Live Dush, broke past 1 million plays, hinting at a genuine talent. But Migo's lyrics and videos blurred the line between art and life. He styled himself as young and violent, and his social media was a must-watch for fans and, inevitably, for law enforcement. The up-and-coming rapper was effectively broadcasting his crew's exploits to the world, a decision that would come back to haunt him. By 2020, Brown's crew had built a lucrative open-air drug market along Kennedy Street. Neighbors saw young men on street corners at all hours, as lookouts whistled warning signals whenever unfamiliar cars rolled by. For a while, KDY's operation was brazenly public. Prosecutors later said the crew commandeered an entire portion of a local community and turned it into an open-air drug market. Undercover officers easily made buys. Over an 18-month investigation, they purchased 83 pounds of marijuana, 400 grams of fentanyl, and 224 grams of crack from KDY dealers on the street. The crew's ready access to wholesale supply helped them dominate the local trade. Brown himself was key to smuggling bulk quantities of marijuana from the West Coast into D.C. Crew members made frequent trips to California, flying out to Los Angeles and back with suitcases full of high-grade, exotic weed. On a 2022 trip through Dulles Airport, police seized nearly 200 pounds of marijuana packed into checked luggage, linked to KDY couriers. On another occasion, Brown's associate Kenneth Olugbenga was actually caught at San Francisco's airport with a drug-filled suitcase. But even that bust did little to slow the operation. Profits were pouring in, and Migo Lee and his crew flaunted their wealth with designer clothes, luxury cars, and stacks of cash in Instagram posts. He practically lived on Instagram, posting videos of himself counting cash, flashing gold jewelry, and displaying bags of pills for sale. Investigators noted that he used Instagram stories like classified ads, openly advertising Percocet, oxycodone pills, and other drugs to any buyer who knew how to DM him. For the Kennedy Street Crew, 2021 and 2022 were years of war. Each month brought new headlines about shootings linked to the crew. One of the bloodiest incidents came on September 4th, 2021, when a shootout erupted in the 600 block of Longfellow Street Northwest.
Tonight, there is a larger police presence in the Brightwood Park neighborhood in Northwest D.C. 6 people were shot there Saturday night. 3 of them were killed.
Just a few blocks off Kennedy. As evening fell, gunmen armed with at least one rifle ambushed a group of people outside a row of houses, unleashing a barrage of bullets. By the time the smoke cleared, 3 people lay dead and 3 more were wounded. Among the casualties were 24-year-old Keenan Braxton, aka Dushy, and 37-year-old Johnny Joyner. The third victim, 31-year-old Donetta Dyson, was an innocent bystander, a mother of 2 and hospital worker caught in the crossfire. The triple homicide in Brightwood Park shocked the city. Just an hour earlier, a member of the Riggs Park crew in Northeast D.C. had been shot a few miles away. Riggs crew members retaliated, injuring 3 and fatally wounding 3 others. For Migo Lee, the violence came right to his doorstep in the pre-dawn hours of October 10, 2022. Gunfire erupted at a quiet suburban house in Bowie, Maryland, the home of Lee's family. This upscale single-family house on a cul-de-sac was one of the crew's stash locations, where Migo and his brothers Keon and Miasiah Brown lived along with a close associate, Jovan Chewy Williams. That morning, neighbors were jolted awake by the shots and bullets hitting the home. Prince George's County Police responded to a report of a shooting at the house around 4 a.m. At first, the Browns' mother, answering the door, insisted no one was injured and downplayed the incident. But officers immediately saw evidence of a firefight. Multiple bullet holes in the living room window, blood pooling on the floor, spent shell casings strewn about, and a trail of blood leading out the front. It looked like someone had been hit and dragged out in a hurry. The cops secured the scene and obtained a warrant. Inside, they discovered a trove of contraband that gave hints to Migo Lee's double life. They seized 3 firearms with extended magazines, numerous rounds of ammo, and nearly $47,000 cash scattered through the house. In the basement and garage, they found hardshell suitcases packed with approximately 103 pounds of weed, likely fresh from a West Coast run, along with 66 grams of crack cocaine, about 106 grams of oxycodone pills, and 79.6 grams of stimulants. This quiet Bowie home had been serving as a warehouse for the crew's drug supply. The attack on the stash house was a message. KDY had enemies who knew where they slept. Brown was lucky to escape harm that morning, but the writing was on the wall. The cycle of retaliation was catching up to him. Migo Lee and his crew got get back immediately. Later that day, October 10, 2022, gunshots rang out in at least 2 separate locations as KDY struck back. Investigators would later link a Glock 45 handgun, equipped with an extended magazine, to 2 shootings on October 10th, one in Tacoma Park, Maryland, and another in Southeast Washington, D.C. Forensic analysis showed Brown's younger brother Keon's DNA on that Glock, suggesting he was the trigger man in those revenge attacks. Migo Lee's crew set out to even the score, spraying bullets in 2 neighborhoods, continuing the cycle. A shooting for a shooting, blood for blood. Just a month later came one of the crew's most brazen acts. On November 18, 2022, as afternoon classes ended at Jackson Reed High School, students milling around the north entrance suddenly heard the rapid staccato of gunfire. Witnesses saw a masked man letting off rounds indiscriminately on the street outside the school. Panicked teenagers screamed and dove for cover behind cars and brick walls. Teachers herding kids onto buses shouted for everyone to get down. The gunman emptied a 30-round magazine in seconds, the muzzle flashes flickering in the daylight. By sheer luck, no students were killed in this wild spray of bullets. As the echoes of the gunfire faded, the shooter sprinted to a black getaway car, an Infiniti registered to Khalil Migo Brown, disappearing before police could arrive. It appeared to be a targeted hit on a rival crew member spotted near the school, though the assailant ended up firing wildly. Later analysis matched some of the recovered shell casings to a 9mm Glock, outfitted with a full auto switch. That same modified Glock would resurface in Brown's possession months later. The Jackson Reed incident underscored how far Migo Lee and his cronies were willing to go. As he would describe it, they were young and violent, living up to their own tagline. But by now, they had drawn the full attention of local and federal law enforcement. The string of public shootings, from the suburbs of Bowie to a DC high school, made it clear to the feds that the Kennedy Street crew was a menace that had to be taken down before more innocent people died. Behind the scenes, the Metropolitan Police, FBI, DEA, ATF, IRS, and U.S. Attorney's Office were already collaborating on an intensive investigation of KDY, using wiretaps, undercover buys, surveillance cameras, and even monitoring Brown's prolific social media. Investigators were quietly building a RICO-like case to dismantle the crew. The turning point came in early 2023, just weeks after the high school shooting. Federal agents got wind that Migo Lee and several crew members were making another trip to California. On January 26, 2023, a team of DEA and ATF agents staked out the baggage claim at Baltimore-Washington International Airport, BWI, waiting for Brown's red-eye flight from Los Angeles to arrive. Sure enough, around dawn, Brown and two accomplices, including Herman Eric Bibmin Signou, were spotted collecting multiple large suitcases from the carousel. As agents moved in to intercept, chaos broke out. The officers managed to seize 5 of the suitcases, which were later found stuffed with 39.2 kilograms of marijuana, vacuum-sealed in brick-like bundles. But Brown and Signou bolted, abandoning some luggage and slipping away in the confusion at the terminal. Rather than chase them through a crowded airport, agents decided to follow discreetly. They knew the suspects would lead them to an even bigger prize, another stash house. Unmarked surveillance vehicles tailed Migo Lee's car as it left BWI and drove back into DC. Brown, likely unaware that half his load had been seized, headed straight to a row house on the 1700 block of D Street Northeast, a quiet residential street in the Rosedale-Kingman Park area of Northeast DC. Federal agents and MPD had already suspected this property was one of KDY's operating bases, thanks to a social media slip-up by Migo himself. In fact, investigators had compared photos from Brown's own Instagram stories to real estate pictures of the D Street house, and noticed the same distinctive living room decor, essentially confirming the house as Migo's stash spot. Now the fugitives had led them right to the doorstep. Within hours, a judge signed a search warrant. Heavily armed agents breached the front door and swept inside. Khalil Migo Lee Brown was found in the basement, along with his brothers Keon, 21, and Miasaya, 21, and crew members Tristan Greedy Ware, 23, Jovan Chewy Williams, 19, and Herman Signou, 23. Essentially, the core leadership of KDY caught, with nowhere to go. What the agents discovered in that D Street Northeast house was staggering. Scattered throughout the basement were 10 loaded firearms, including 2 with switches. 4 of the guns were found stuffed in one of the very suitcases that Brown had lugged from the airport just hours earlier. That suitcase also contained a haul of bulk drugs. In addition to the marijuana from LA, there were 351 fentanyl-laced counterfeit oxycodone pills and 50 genuine oxycodone pills. The rest of the basement looked like a mini armory and drug warehouse. There were stacks of vacuum-sealed weed, cutting agents, scales, and rolls of cash. Forensics teams later matched Migo Lee's DNA to 2 of the firearms in this trove, including the Glock 17 9mm, outfitted with a switch that had been used to spray Jackson Reed High School with bullets in November. Keon Brown's DNA turned up on 3 other guns, one of which was the Glock 45 pistol, linked to the retaliatory shootings on October 10, 2022. The D Street bust was a treasure trove of evidence for prosecutors. Guns tied to specific violent acts, drugs tied to interstate trafficking, and suspects literally caught with their hands on both. It was also a personal disaster for Migo Lee. The feds now had everything they needed to ensure that Brown's burgeoning rap career would be cut short by a lengthy prison term. In the wake of the D Street raid, law enforcement intensified the pressure. Some lower-ranking crew members began to flip and cooperate. Over the next few months, grand jury indictments rolled out, eventually charging 12 members of the Kennedy Street crew under a sweeping conspiracy case. The indictment, unsealed in June 2023, painted a vivid picture of a sophisticated and deadly criminal enterprise. KDY members were accused of trafficking hundreds of pounds of marijuana, crack cocaine, and fentanyl, using violence and intimidation, including at least 5 murders to protect their turf, and laundering their drug money through casinos and shell companies. Specifically, prosecutors said Brown's crew funneled over $1.8 million in dirty cash through the MGM National Harbor Casino and a sham business called Heavy Bags LLC, a supposed car detailing shop that in reality did almost no legitimate business. Instead, the fake company's bank accounts were used to pay for luxury airfare, hotels, fine dining, and even sports betting, essentially turning drug dollars into a lavish lifestyle. Financial crimes investigators from the IRS had to untangle the web of transactions, eventually uncovering the full scope of KDY's profits and spending. On June 26, 2023, in a coordinated dawn operation, FBI and MPD SWAT teams fanned out across DC and Maryland to arrest the remaining Kennedy Street crew targets. Khali Migo Lee Brown, then 22 years old, was caught at an apartment on 5th Street Northwest, near 5th and O Streets, alongside his brother Myasia and co-defendant Tristan Greedy Ware. This apartment was yet another stash house the crew used, notable for having appeared in one of Migo's own music videos shortly before his arrest. Agents searching the unit found 6 more loaded firearms hidden in closets and furniture, 4 of which had switches, plus a high-capacity drum magazine, about $2,700 in cash, and 3.5 kilograms of packaged marijuana ready for sale. At the same time, other KDY members were picked up. Kenneth Olugbenga, the crew's suspected chief financier, was arrested, as were Kirby, Turtle, Ron G, Boy Boy, Fat Ant, and Koki. One KDY member, Keon Brown, managed to avoid capture that day. He was on the run as a fugitive, refusing to turn himself in. Keon's freedom didn't last long. Desperate and defiant, the 21-year-old went on a short-lived crime spree even as his brother sat behind bars. On November 17, 2023, Keon and a few remaining crew associates committed a violent armed carjacking at gunpoint in DC's Buzzard Point area, stealing a man's Chevrolet Corvette and other valuables. Within an hour, the same crew robbed 3 more victims at gunpoint on P Street Northwest, snatching wallets, phones, and even a pair of shoes. But these would be Keon's final lick. Police tracked an AirTag device, attached to a stolen Tesla key, to an apartment building on Benning Road Southeast, and found Keon hiding in a laundry room with another KDY member. They arrested him on the spot, recovering 4 firearms stashed behind a washing machine, as well as a pill bottle of 62 oxycodone tablets he intended to sell. With that, every last member of the Kennedy Street crew was now in custody or accounted for. Facing overwhelming evidence, Migo Lee and his co-defendants began to fold one by one. Plea deals were struck throughout 2024. By the fall, all 17 men charged in the case had either pleaded guilty or been convicted. Prosecutors had targeted the crew's leadership, and Khali Migo Brown was a trophy catch. On September 20, 2024, Brown shuffled into a federal courtroom, shackled at the wrists and ankles, to formally admit his crimes. Before U.S. District Judge Beryl A. Howell, the 23-year-old rapper spoke in a low voice as he pleaded guilty to a trilogy of felonies. 1. Conspiracy to distribute over 100 kilograms of marijuana, plus fentanyl and oxycodone. 2. Possession of firearms in furtherance of drug trafficking. And 3. Assault with a dangerous weapon. The latter charge specifically tied to the shooting outside Jackson Reed High School. In doing so, Brown admitted to participating in the massive drug conspiracy that flooded Northwest DC with narcotics, and acknowledged his role in the violent acts that secured the crew's reign. His younger brother Keon Brown pleaded guilty the same day to the drug conspiracy and a firearm charge for his part in the enterprise. On January 16, 2025, Judge Howell delivered the final reckoning. Migo Lee Brown, was sentenced to 168 months, 14 years, in federal prison, to be followed by 5 years of supervised release. His brother Keon received 147 months, over 12 years behind bars. Other crew members had already been sentenced. Kenneth Olugbenga, the crew's money man, got 13 years. Tristan Greedy Ware got 10 years. Jovan Chewy Williams got 7 years, and so on down the line. Some lower-level players received as little as 15 months, but the core violent offenders drew stiff terms. When news of Migo Lee's sentence hit local media, it came with a bittersweet footnote. At the time of his sentencing, the 23-year-old rapper still had nearly 50,000 listeners tuning into his music each month on Spotify. It was a stark reminder of Brown's squandered potential